in a pantograph in a particular area. We already have borders lined up for this quilt, and I want to run a pantograph that goes right inside in this middle block. Now on most quilts, when we're running pantographs, you know, they can go off the edge an inch or two. It really doesn't matter. We're not too concerned about it. But when we're trying to fit in a pantograph, a few of you have said that you have problems doing that. I want to show you what I feel works, you know, some of the things that I think work for this, for these to fit in really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and touch the reference point. Okay, here I am getting ready to add a pattern. So I'm going to add a pattern, and it's a pantograph pattern. And I'm going to select the block. I want to select this middle block here. And I already know what pattern I want to use because it matches the border. It's Deb Geisler's pinwheel. I think that's what it's called. I'm not really sure. Pinwheels and leaves or something like that. But here it is all fit in. And I want to show you something. If we zoom this in, see what's happening. We have partial patterns running off the edge. Of course, with our IntelliQuilter, that's fine. If it was a normal quilt, we wouldn't even have an issue with this. It would run those stitching lines, you know, up the quilt, and we wouldn't really be concerned with this. However, when we're wanting to fit in a pantograph in an area like this, we don't necessarily want to have partial patterns. We don't want that stitching line to run up, you know, the inside the border. That's not really the way we want to do stitch in the ditch. Chances are, you know, I know it would not work out that way. So what we're trying to do is to get the pattern to look and fit in there without having partial patterns. And the way to do that, we have a feature here. It's called Clip On, Clip Off. And when I hit Clip On, what it does is, let me zoom out so you can see. What it's doing is it's fitting that pattern into this area with perfect repeats. Each of these designs going across is a repeat. If you can see, there's a pinwheel, there's a pinwheel, there's a pinwheel. It didn't have room to put another repeat, so it cut it off. Same with down here. Here's a row, and here's a row. It didn't have enough room to put another row with the perfect repeat, so it cut it off. Now, you know, this looks strange, and you're thinking, oh, that's not going to work. Well, the first thing we do is we want to get the row height so it does work. We'll just stretch it a little bit so that it fits right in there. Now, that's fitting in there, you know, the way that would be very acceptable. Now, I want to just show you what would happen if you put too many in. Okay. What it's telling me is the row height now is 13. If this is 13 and this is 13 and this is 13, I don't have enough space to put three rows of 13 in. So it took it off. It tells me, nope, you can't do that. So I need to get that row height down. 12.87 will fit in there. So it left another one in there. So I've got 3 rows. Each of them are 12.87. So we're okay with the height. We filled in the gap. Let me pan it up here a little bit. We filled in this gap so that the bottom looks good. Now what we have to be concerned about is this right hand side. Like I said, we've got 3 repeats going right here. We've got a pinwheel there, a pinwheel there, pinwheel there, and it's not, you know, it says we can't add another full repeat because of the way it's, you know, because of the size of it. So what we want to do now, that's where the skew feature comes in. We want to hit skew, and I'm stretching those 3 repeats. You can either hit your shift or you can just pull it across there. Now if I get real close, I'll probably do my shift. Now if I go one further, what's going to happen is it's going to knock off. Same thing it did with the height. Well, there we go. Now we've only got 2 repeats. It's saying we don't have enough room over here to put another repeat in, so it knocked it off. And so what we're going to do is just add that right back in there, and we're all even. What I like about this, now if we zoom in on the edges, what you'll see is these edges, there's no lines, there's no partial patterns. They're full patterns running all inside this block. let me zoom out so we can see this again. You know, and I think that's pretty acceptable. Some patterns are better for this than other patterns. You know, some patterns you wouldn't want to stretch it too far one way. It may get distorted. I think this one actually looks fine. I don't think that looks distorted. Let me blow that up, but I think that looks, you know, it's amazing how much you can skew these and how you can stretch them and, you know, get them totally out of the proportions that they were meant to be in, but they still look good. What type of a pattern works well for this scenario? Let me go ahead and back out of this. Zoom out. Okay, now if I, let me go ahead and show you, I guess if I just up my row height, that'll do it. Okay, I want you to look at the edge of this. Do you see how nice and even the edge of this is? You know, the full repeats really come out to the edge. There's like 4 repeats right in here. There's 1, 2, and then another row, 1, 2. And the edges come out and they're really nice and even. The bottom is really nice and even. Some patterns are interlocking where they swoop up and down and then the next pattern comes up to fill it. Those are beautiful patterns. But on an area where you want to get it in a rectangle, I would stick more with finding a pantograph that works like this. I'm going to put a plug in for Deb Geisler's patterns. I've used them, you know, I had another system before I had the IQ, and this was the only option we had. We had to stretch it and skew it. We could not fill in half patterns. The interlocking ones were a nightmare, but you know, these patterns worked fine. And so I'm very familiar with looking for patterns that really fit in good without having those little extra areas that we need to fill in. Deb Geisler's, most of her pantographs are designed like this. They're very square, very rectangle. I want to show you a pattern, what would happen with a pattern that isn't like that. I love this pattern. It's not that I'm knocking the pattern. It just doesn't work as well for a situation like this as some of Deb Geisler's. This is called Rainbow Flight. Nikki, oh, I'm trying to think of her last name. Nikki and Diane Designs, I believe, is the name of it. I could be wrong. Even when we get rid of when we turn the clip on, and even when we get rid of the gap, do you see what's happening here? We've got edges here that are not very even. We've got holes here. You could actually add more patterns to fill that up. Well, no, you really couldn't, because you wouldn't want to clip out, because then you'd end up with the lines again. Even if I skew this, even if I skew it over, I can't get it to the edge where it's going to look good on the edge, and I can't get the row height to where it's going to look good. You know, it's touching it's going to give me half patterns or holes and gaps. So this pattern I probably would scratch for something like this. Like I said, Deb Geisler had most of her patterns are like that. I don't really know other designers that are designed like that, but that is something you want to look for. You want to look for patterns that are more square. See, these are some of her patterns. See, that's a square. It's a pantograph that's designed in a square. This one's designed in a square. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to zoom in on some of the ones that I have. Let's see. Okay, this one right here. Whoops. I'm not going to be able to get that. But this one you can see. That's more of a square. This one's more of a square, rectangle. Squares and rectangles are fine. Even her daisy pattern, it's more of a square, rectangle. It fits in well. Let me go next. This was the one I was using. That's more of a square. And that's the one that worked. See, when I go to clip it, row height, it's really easy once you get the hang of it. You know, you can't really go wrong. You go too far, you just back it off. You go too far on the skew, you know, you go too far, and it knocks it off, so you've got to come back the other way. Get it close. And that's pretty much how I fit a pattern in. In a few minutes, I'm going to go over to my shop and actually quilt this so that you can see how I line up that pattern. Penny Bubar just did a video on our long arm chat site that has how she works in pantographs, and she is not even concerned about border things, but she gets it so that they're just always lined up very nice and straight. And I've been doing that technique, and it works really well. So we'll look at that in a few minutes.